Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency the Governor, Boy Bukhari, CMG, CBO, Minister for Overseas Territories, Mr. Henry Bellingham, MP, Premier and Minister of Finance, Dr. the Honorable D. Orlando Smith, OBE, and we all stand, please.
Please sit. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Minister Henry Bellingham, His Excellency the Governor, Madam Deputy Governor, Ministers of Government, Government Backbenchers, Financial Secretary, Permanent Secretaries, Chairman of the BVI Tourist Board, I think is here, members of the press, good morning again. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to formally welcome Mr. Bellingham, MP, to our beautiful shores. I say formally, as I was honored and pleased to accompany him to our sister island of Virgin Gorda yesterday, to not only experience its beauty and charm, but to get a better appreciation of multi-island living BVI style. I'm very pleased that Mr. Bellingham accepted my invitation, extended last November, to visit the BVI at this time, as today is a very significant day in the evolution of the partnership between the Virgin Islands and the United Kingdom. In a few minutes, we will sign the protocols for effective financial management, signaling a commitment from the government and people of the Virgin Islands to manage our fiscal resources in a more transparent and efficient manner, and in turn, the United Kingdom's commitment to support us in this effort. I'm grateful to Mr. Steve Johnson and his colleague Naomi Jeffries of Her Majesty's Treasury for agreeing to travel to the BVI in February so that we could sit down and hammer out an agreement that was mutually acceptable on both sides. Perhaps more importantly, I'm grateful to my ministers here who supported me in the ensuing negotiations with the Treasury representatives so that today we have an agreement that embodies the self-sufficiency and autonomy which we have as a people have always held so dearly. Indeed, since 1976, when we ceased to need granting aid, and are therefore fully responsible for our budget, we have guarded that autonomy jealously. The possibility of a deviation from this was one of considerable concern to this entire territory. To put this all in perspective, in 2010, Her Majesty's government came to the conclusion that the borrowing guidelines signed in 2005 were inadequate to provide them with assurance of this territory's fiscal accountability. The United Kingdom government, facing its own fiscal challenges and recognizing the very real threat of unaffordable contingent liabilities, decided to partner with several overseas territories to produce an arrangement to minimize this threat. After some consultation, a proposal for a new commitment was presented to the then administration in 2011 that encompassed methods of international best practice in governance, fiscal and economic planning, and risk management. Some of the measures contained therein compensated for perceived weaknesses in our current financial management system that we ourselves should have eliminated. More worrying to my colleagues and I when we took office last year was the fact that had the previous administration carried through the financial management reform initiative crafted by our administration in 2004 to its conclusion, the need for these proposals by Her Majesty's government would not have arisen. At that time, we recognized the deficiencies in our financial system, our data collection and analysis, as well as in our management practices. We promised you, the people, then that we would improve the status quo, and as a result, start to improve these systems so that you might be better able to participate in the development of the future of this territory. Although our efforts were overtaken by a change in administration, I am today happy to state that signing these protocols mean that my colleagues and I are back on the path towards the responsible management of our fiscal affairs. We have chosen active participation in the decision-making process for you, the people of this territory, and accountability for actions for you as elected officials. Ladies and gentlemen, I do firmly share the view voiced by a former UK Prime Minister. It says, "It is not an arrogant government that chooses priorities, it is an irresponsible government that fails to choose." This government is fully committed to accountability, transparency, and information-based decision-making. The protocols which we are about to formalize by signature this morning are indicative of a determination to adhere to 5 important principles with 1. Fiscal and economic planning, 2. Transparency, 3. Decision-making based on quantitative data and analysis, 4. Value for money, and 5. Proactive risk management. As we have already demonstrated since our assumption of office in November last year, no longer will it be the norm to make black box or purely partisan decisions on the future of the territory, but instead that the ideas will be presented to you on the basis of research, analysis, and supporting documentation. Today's signing is indicative of our unequivocal commitment to doing this. Unlike the previous administration's paralysis in forging ahead to adopt the fundamental principles of good governance that form the basis of the framework for fiscal responsibility, presented to them out of a necessity to ensure that proper governance reigns supreme in this territory, my colleagues and I indicated our own commitment to these principles and dialogue with the United Kingdom government to formulate a new agreement that is sensitive to our own unique circumstances. The protocols for effective financial management will be complemented by a strengthened public finance management law to be drafted and presented to the House of Assembly later this year. In these protocols, one will find the very strong principles of medium-term planning, transparency, decision-making based on accurate quantitative data and analysis, value for money guarantees, and proactive risk management at its core principles. In these proposals, one will not find a requirement to send a budget to the United Kingdom for approval, nor will one find the heavy, intrusive hand of a concerned big brother, but instead will find a commitment by the Virgin Islands to manage itself responsibly, and the United Kingdom government who now recognizes that the people of this territory can and will, if given the opportunity, take care of themselves responsibly. I believe that today, by the signature of this document, the Minister and Her Majesty's government, which he represents, has demonstrated a renewed confidence in this territory. A new direction is being forged, ladies and gentlemen, a dramatic change. One that signals a departure from the old ways of partnership to the partnership that is based on mutual respect and the shared value of doing what is best in the best interest of our people. My colleagues and I have but one goal in advancing this partnership between the United Kingdom and the Virgin Islands. This goal proposes that each side will always consider the position of the other, and that we will move ahead in one accord, recognizing that though we may have different circumstances, as a unit, we can build off of each other's strengths to form a mutually beneficial solution and destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to share in this significant occasion with us. May God bless you. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a huge pleasure for me to be here this morning on my first visit to the BVI. I'm really privileged to be among these really quite remarkably beautiful islands. And I've had an incredibly warm welcome, and I'd like to thank everyone for the hospitality that's been extended to me. I was very fortunate yesterday to accept the Premier's invitation to go across to Virgin Gorda to have a look at another part of the BVI and to see for myself on a trip around some of the islands just how incredibly diverse and beautiful they are. I've been to many of our territories, I've been to many countries in the Caribbean, but I think the BVI encompasses so much beauty, so much natural beauty, and the warmth of the people really is quite remarkable. And I've enjoyed talking to the Premier and his cabinet this morning about some of our plans for developing the country and for moving forward. We've had really good discussions about the forthcoming Overseas Territories White Paper, on which I'll say a bit more in a moment. We've talked about the way you plan to develop your economy in a sustainable way. We've talked about your plans for protecting the environment. And we've talked also about the BVI's involvement in Her Majesty's Diamond Jubilee celebrations and the London 2012 Olympics. It's going to be a very exciting time for the UK and the single realm in this remarkable year. But I've also would like to say this. I think there's no question, Premier, but BVI is a huge success story. There's no doubt about that. For a small country to have achieved so much really is nothing short of remarkable. But that success is something that we're very proud of. But we want to work with you in partnership to guarantee and to protect that success going forward. Now, very importantly, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Honourable Premier, we discussed public finances. And I'm very pleased indeed. We're going to shortly sign the Government of British Virgin Islands protocols for effective financial management. These demonstrate, as you rightly pointed out, the BVI government's commitment to prudent fiscal management and returning the finances, the public finances, to a sustainable footing. And I think this is going to be welcomed throughout the BVI and indeed internationally. What you have is a world-class financial services centre here. And if that can be complemented by fiscal management that is responsible and fit for purpose, then that is going to, I think, give the BVI even more credibility. So I welcome, Honourable Premier, your commitment to revising the Public Finance Management Act to make it more robust, and I also welcome your commitment to increase transparency and improve planning and risk management. Taken together, these steps will ensure that the BVI government will have the available means to focus resources on priorities and that value for money is obtained for the people of the BVI. Now, governments have clear responsibilities and a clear leadership role in implementing the policies necessary to deliver sustainable public finances. Your Premier is showing that leadership. Your Premier made clear that the measures announced in his budget speech were only the start of a process. In this very tough global economy, there are bound to be challenges ahead for all of us, for the UK government, for the BVI government, and for many other governments around the world, as we build more diverse and resilient economies. Remaining focused on our shared priority of sustainable public finances really is vital. But no government can succeed without the support and involvement of the private sector and others as well in the public sector. I think there's no question that every resident of these remarkable islands has a stake in the success of the BVI. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about the positive contributions being made by civil society and by everyone in the BVI to the continued success of the BVI. And I've certainly noticed one thing: the environment here is very, very important and special. You have some really quite amazing habitats and ecosystems, both land-based and marine-based. Now, protecting those is going to be very important. And I mentioned to your cabinet this morning, Honourable Premier, that 90% of the UK's biodiversity is located in the overseas territories. That means we have a huge responsibility. It means we have huge reputational risk. But I applaud the way in which you want to move the BVI forward economically. You want growth, you want prosperity, you want jobs for young people, you want skills for the future, you want a world-class tourism industry with the infrastructure to support it. But at the same time, you want to do this in a way that is in harmony with this quite remarkable environment. And we are prepared and we are keen to work with you in partnership on that agenda. And that brings me on to the White Paper, because as I told the Premier this morning, we're really grateful to the BVI's engagement with the consultation on the White Paper. The White Paper really does, in my judgment, it marks a new chapter in the relationship between Britain and the overseas territories. I think for too long, UK governments haven't put enough emphasis on the territories. We haven't realised their key strategic importance. We haven't realised that working together in partnership, we can actually achieve so much more. And there are many good proposals in the white paper, but all about increasing the engagement between the territories and the UK. But I'm pleased to say that you're actually, Honourable Premier, in front of the curve on this, because you signed a partnership agreement with Hertfordshire County Council last year. And that agreement is going to mean that there's going to be an opportunity to share knowledge, to share expertise, and to have those exchanges that are going to be really important. Within the UK, there is a vast amount of experience and knowledge. We're not saying that we want to come to the overseas territories and tell them how to run their affairs, far from it. But there is expertise there, and in many small countries, there isn't the capacity that can develop the same level of expertise, and so we can share that, and we can work together for the future. And I think that's going to be something that will be hugely beneficial to not just the BVI, but all of the territories. And I'd like to also point out as well that we want to work together with you to make sure that the UK does all it possibly can to protect your financial services industry. You can achieve so much by yourself, of course you can, but if you have the UK standing shoulder to shoulder with you, we can go into those international fora and we can work together to get the right results. Again, on the environment which I mentioned, we can work together to protect those quite remarkable habitats. And in many other areas, I think working together, we can actually achieve a huge amount. And that's the essence of this white paper. It's the essence of, I think, what is our relationship, Mr. Premier. We have developed a very strong personal relationship, and I think that by working alongside each other, working shoulder to shoulder, we can achieve so much more, not just for your people, but for the UK as well. The UK is very proud of its overseas territories. Someone asked me this morning, why does the UK keep the overseas territories? What's in it for the UK? Well, what's in it for the UK is the pride in knowing that we have these territories, countries like the BVI, where the people of the BVI, they have the right to self-determination, of course they do, but so long as they want to remain British, we will cherish that, we will honour that, and we will work with you. Thank you very much indeed, Honourable Premier, Your Excellency. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for the warm welcome I've received. It really has been very, very humbling, and it's been a great visit so far, and I look forward over the next couple of days to meeting even more Virgin Islanders and to hearing even more about this great country. And obviously, myself and the Premier would be happy to take questions in a moment. Thank you. Well, thank you, Premier. That's fantastic. You've signed it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very important. I think it certainly underpins the administration.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We now invite questions from the media.
Who would like to go first? Well, I must say you're a very quiet media press corps. When I was in Cayman the other day, we were besieged with questions.
We're just getting started.
Good afternoon, Beverly Lewis from ZBVI Radio. This question is directed to Mr. Billingham. Now, BVI have taken a number of steps in terms of managing its fiscal affairs in a more prudent manner. And based on your comments earlier, I think that you're satisfied, but do you get a sense of the UK government by extension that more needs to be done by BVI?
I have great confidence in your Premier and his team. He inherited a tough situation, and there's no question that there were some significant challenges that he had to address. And I do believe that the action he's taken has given confidence to the UK government, to the wider markets. And I think in this very tough global climate, any government that takes action to address deficits and potential problems in its finances is going to command respect. And so the measures that the Premier is taking, I think, are doing exactly that. And of course there are going to be challenges ahead, but as I said, the whole essence of our relationship is one based on trust and partnership, and that's why having this protocol in place is it's a big comfort factor to the UK, because it means that there's a commitment in place to manage public finances efficiently and effectively.
Thank you.
I'm Gordon French, BVI Platinum News. I'm just trying to confirm, Mr. Billingham and the Premier, whether the BVI will have to still go ahead and set its budget for pre-approval. It wasn't clear on what measures will be taken in that regard.
I think the thing to bear in mind is that the agreement we signed today, it's about working together to deliver our shared objective of sustainable public finances and increased resilience. So consistent with that partnership, the government of the BVI will supply the UK government with information on fiscal, economic, project appraisal matters. So but there's no question of us trying to micromanage things, but by working together we share information.
Jason Smith from the Beacon. But does that, sir, mean that the budget will be pre-approved by London before it's passed here in the House of Assembly?
No, we don't want to micromanage the budgets of territories, but we do expect to share information, and we expect to know what's going on, and that's very important.
Just a follow-up, does this mean that it's different from the situation in Cayman Islands where they have to submit it for pre-approval?
Look, unlike some countries, namely the French, we don't have sort of one-size-fits-all for our territories, and we don't try and micromanage them. We actually believe in working in partnership. We believe in building up trust. I think the trust we're building up between our two governments is manifest. It's represented by that document there, and we have every confidence that information will be shared in the future. I don't know what you feel, Premier, but that is what it's all about.
No, I do concur with what Minister Billingham said. The whole idea is the development of this new framework for financial management is partly to make sure that this country is managing its affairs much better than it has been in the past. And in so doing, to reassure the British government that they will not be saddled with unnecessary liabilities. And in so doing, of course, exchange information and discourse is necessary, as it has always been. There's always been discourse between the financial secretary and other financial persons in the Treasury and the Her Majesty's government. The last budget that was passed in the House of Assembly was then assented to, as was required by the governor, and this process will continue.
Fariza Hanif, Standpoint newspaper. Mr. Bellingham, prior to coming here, you were in the Cayman Islands, you said. The Premier in that territory is currently under police investigations for financial irregularities. Assuming that these allegations are substantiated and proven through an appropriate court process, what action does the UK government intend to take, and in particular, what steps will be taken to prevent this from occurring in the future in other overseas territories?
I think I'd like to make the point, but I'm here to talk about the BVI, the excellent relationship I have with your Premier, the fact I have every confidence in your government. what goes on in the Cayman Islands is obviously of concern to the UK, but I'll just make this point. As far as the constitutional position is concerned, the Peace Commission in the Cayman Islands is completely separate from the British government. There's a separation of, there's an independent inquiry going on, and obviously that will take its course, and I wouldn't want to comment on it further.
Anika Edwards from National News Online. Please forgive me, but did the UK government see the budget before it was passed? And you said the Premier faced some challenges. Could you just tell us what were some of the challenges?
As far as the budget is concerned, what I've made clear is that it's not because of this protocol that we've signed, there's going to be a sharing of information. And so what matters is that we have confidence in each other. He has confidence enough to share with me all sorts of information regarding the public finances, and so we consult together and we work together so that we then make sure that when there is the budget in place, it's one that is going to be fit for purpose. And so I think that the most important thing is to bear in mind that this protocol is going to put the situation onto a different footing to what was the case before. And I think that it is, as I say, it's based all about partnership. Now, when I said that the Premier faces challenges, when the Premier came to power, he found that the finances of this country had been badly stretched. He found that there had been commitments made that needed to be honoured, and so the incoming government did what any responsible incoming government would have done, and that is put in place measures to face up to those fiscal challenges, and I have every confidence that the Premier is doing that.
Good afternoon. Julio Henry, Speak Your Mind. What is the UK government doing right now to minimize the impact of the carbon tax, which is obviously having an impact on tourism arrival to the territories in the Caribbean, in particular the smaller territories, which as the UK territories? What are you doing to minimize that?
Yes, passenger. Yes, you're talking about air passenger duty.
The air passenger
APT.
emission tax, yes.
Yes, indeed. This is something that the UK government put in place. It's not something that we did lightly, because no one likes to put up taxes. But we also, like this government, were faced with some very stiff financial challenges, and obviously our inclination was to do our level best to have a combination of reducing public expenditure, which is what we're doing, and also not increasing direct taxation, if at all possible, or trying to reduce company taxation, which is what we're doing, but looking to raise revenue in other ways. Now, I think there's some legitimate points around APT in terms of how the different zones are formatted, and wherever I go in the Caribbean, and particularly with the overseas territories, I do meet premiers and other ministers who raise these points with me, and I do pass them on to our Treasury, obviously. And like any tax regime in any country, the UK, we take a view, but it's always a question of work in progress, and so we can look at representations made, and I can push for changes if need be. But on this particular tax, the Treasury have been quite firm that they feel that it is fit for purpose, even though it is obviously it is tough, and it is going to affect, it's going to increase the costs of tourism and tourists. But on the other hand, it's something that we do keep under constant review, I can tell you.
One follow-up question. Is there any collaborative effort on behalf of the UK, along with the BVI government, from the UK side, to boost tourism a little bit more? There seemed to be a lack of information. If we talk about partnership, 60 million people, potential customers for the BVI, what are you guys doing from a UK standpoint to help boost tourism in the country, since you have this tax and obviously it's hampering tourism arrival to the BVI shores?
Yes, indeed, and I obviously take on board what you say about the APT, and that's something that I pass those comments on a regular basis to our Treasury, to my Treasury colleagues. I think in terms of boosting tourism, that is a very, very important point. We feel very strongly that the tourism offer we have here is one that is truly world class. It's a fantastic tourism offer, and it's one that we want to really shout about in the UK. And I had an interesting experience yesterday. I met a couple of British tourists in the Hillside Cafe on Gorda, that it was called Pig Heaven.
Hog Heaven.
Hog Heaven. Hog Heaven. And we went to this great cafe, and we met a couple of British tourists, and they asked me, and this was a guy who had recently retired, so he was a sophisticated upmarket tourist, and he said to me, what's the connection between Britain and the BVI? And I explained to him that the connection was very, very close, and I said that the people in the BVI were as much British citizens as he was, and that the Gordon was as much part of the UK as where he lived in his hometown. And I think that I've got some ideas for your representative office in London to actually promote the BVI as a destination to British citizens as being something that is really different, unique, and hopefully more attractive to them than going, say, to a French country in the Caribbean or to an independent country.
That was the chairman of the tourist board.
And I think that a lot of the representative offices in London have been missing a trick because they've been presenting a pure tourism product, but they haven't been putting it into context to the travel agents and to the citizens of Britain. And there's a growing appetite for tourism to more exotic places, and it's a very competitive, tough market out there. And certainly, if I was a loyal British citizen and I had X amount of money to spend, and I saw 3 similar products, one was BVI, one was Martinique, the other was Barbados, say, I now probably pick it on the tourism product. But if they're all equal, why not go to the one that's actually an overseas territory?
So is it fair to say that Britain will be spending some of their own money, despite the financial hardship, to help boost tourism in the BVI, for the BVI?
Well, I didn't say that. What I said was that what I said, this is a question of getting the message across and winning hearts and minds. And I think that I can, as your champion in London, keep making the point that the representative offices of the territories should be really pushing the territories. And I can also talk to the travel industry in the UK to make sure that they have special promotions for the overseas territories, including the BVI, but particularly the BVI, because your tourism offer really is quite superb. It's one of the best in the world.
Malika McPherson, the Island Sun newspaper. Minister Bellingham, in one of your responses just now, you mentioned that the Premier found the financial situation of the territory a bit stretched, to use your words. Do you think that this formed a core basis for the protocol that was just signed, the financial situation that was just...
Well, I think it's more a question of the Premier himself. I mean, all we can do in the UK is, it's not our intention to micromanage the territories. It's not our intention to deal with every single last point on the budgets or public expenditure, but it's the direction of travel. And I think it's fair to say that the last government did embark upon a number of unfunded commitments, but the new Premier came in and he had to take action, and we worked with him on that, and one of the outcomes of that was the protocols we've just signed. And I think that the key thing is that the finances, as the Premier has said himself, are now on a much more robust footing. But as I say, it's not a question of the UK trying to micromanage things. It's a question of working, as a grown-up partner and friend to try and get the best outcome. Premier.
Yes, I think you heard the Minister say earlier that in the United Kingdom as well, they're facing financial challenges, and therefore they will be even more concerned about any contingent liabilities that may accrue as a result of any action in any of the dependent territories who then depend on the United Kingdom. And hence a greater interest in ensuring there's proper fiscal management in territories.
I think maybe then I should elaborate on what I was
asking.
Of
course, please do.
Minister, did the UK government foresee a contingent liability?
I think it's fair to say that the BVI have a very strong economic model. You have an economy that has actually weathered the international financial crisis remarkably well. If you compare the BVI economy to some of the smaller Caribbean countries, the independent Caribbean countries, where there has been a huge collapse in per capita income, very major problems created by failure of banks and insurance companies. The BVI has been able to avoid most of that, but on the other hand, no country should take on expenditure commitments, but cannot be truly sustained and met. And I think getting the finances onto a secure footing, was one of the priorities for the incoming government. And that's why as soon as your Premier won the election, and we started talking about what his priorities were, we looked at responsible fiscal management. We looked at how we could help by embedding expertise. We've had experts over here working with the Premier and his colleagues. We talked about things like procurement, and we talked about some of the infrastructure projects and making sure we get best value for money. And that's all part of these protocols. So I'd advise you to read the protocols, because the protocols really are going to be the framework and the fiscal template for moving forward, and they do give me a great deal of confidence that as the world economy picks up, as your business model prospers, as all the ideas we've discussed about developing tourism and some of the other areas we discussed, we've talked about renewable energy, for example. I mean, it seems to me crazy, but in countries in the Caribbean, after all, which are well endowed with sun, with wind, are importing so much fuel oil. It also seems to me that food security has been something forgotten about in the past. Going back many years, most countries in the Caribbean were sustainable in terms of production of food. Now, that has long since been forgotten about, and most countries now import a great deal of food. Now, of course, as living standards increase, people want to import some more exotic food, but it does seem to me that there's children in schools are learning about how to be more self-sufficient. They're learning about the lack of emphasis one should put on importing foods over long distances, and so I think food security is a big issue, and developing that. And I've spoken about that to the Premier, and I think there's some really good ideas for diversifying the economy here.
Yes. Julian Gordon from the Hot Seat program, the radio program. Two very quick things. One relates to the fact that security of many of the countries, small territories like ours, can be undermined very quickly with crime. And essentially, from time to time, even independent countries have to require resources from other places to fight crime, Trinidad and even some of the other larger countries in the region. Now, from the point of view of developing members of the force here to fulfill their role effectively. Yes, we have access to certain members from the UK, but the question is what is being done to ensure that in fact there's a fair exchange of personnel from here attached to UK areas of the institution to develop the skills on a meaningful level. That's the one question. And two, on the immigration side, when I was in UK recently, I've been there twice in the last year, I went to Europe, coming back with my BVI passport. I have not yet sought a UK passport. And essentially, the person at the front line looked at my passport and essentially were about to tell me, oh, look, I can't go back into Britain. I just left Britain with my passport, my BVI passport, for a couple of days. And there were serious questions. They were puzzled. Prior to that, I was asked last year to fill out an ED card for my BVI passport in Britain. Now, those are areas that obviously need some clarification from the point of view of administration. They're bothersome to somebody who, in fact, is supposed to be a British citizen. Be told, look, you can't come in except you've signed some document, etc. So I'd like you to speak to both Mr. Billingham.
Yes, well, on the latter point, I'll certainly take on board what you said, because as far as I'm concerned, citizens of the overseas territories are as much British citizens as I am. And so therefore, there shouldn't be any obstacles put in the way. But I'll ask the Governor to comment a bit more on that. The other point you mentioned about security is incredibly important, because the UK, we feel very strongly that we are responsible for your defence. We're also responsible for working very closely to build up capacity in your security in terms of policing. And certainly, you're right on one very, very important point. But the one thing that could undermine any successful international financial services centre would be an increase in crime, or maybe an explosion of narcotics, drug trafficking and that sort of thing. And so that's why having a really good police force, a small, well-trained, well-equipped police force is very important. And we have been, of all the areas that we have been embedding a lot of expertise and having exchanges going both ways, it is in policing. We want to do more of that. We want to replicate that very successful model of exchanges into other parts of the public sector. So, Governor, would you like to comment on the policing? Because that's been one of your own priorities, and I know you feel very strongly about it.
Well, I just endorse what the Minister said about the critical importance of a low crime environment, a secure environment, not just for the financial services sector, but also, for example, for tourism. If we're going to attract more tourists, we need to ensure that we have low crime. And so we do invest in that heavily. As you know, internal security is one of my special responsibilities, although the responsibility is shared now with the National Security Council under the new constitution. We're doing a lot to train the police. We've had UK police trainers out here. I think you've seen reference to that in the press. Most members of the police force over the last few months have been going through refresher training, enhanced training in investigative skills. We've had BVI police officers back in the UK for training courses and also for attachments to UK constabularies, and that's something we want to do more of. And it's been extended also to other law enforcement agencies. We've had training here in the BVI for the Marine Unit and for all Marine units across the overseas territories done at the H. Levity Stout Community College. These are exactly the areas that are critically important and where I see real benefit in exchange in both directions, both UK police officers coming here to assist, to support, to train, and also BVI officers come back to the UK to learn skills, to build expertise, to learn from attachments, not just training courses. So I very much believe that's the way to go. And the context the new white paper sets is about building links, ensuring that expertise can be shared and experiences can be of benefit here that we've gathered in the UK and vice versa. We had one BVI police officer in the UK who went on a training course and then was attached to the police in London, and they didn't want to give him back. He was so good. He was an officer whose skills were at such a high level, had been enhanced by the training he'd received, that they actually wanted to keep him in London. We had to drag him back to the BVI and say, no, we sent him there so that he could come back and apply his skills here in the BVI. So it is actually two ways, the Minister said. It's really a positive story to tell, and we certainly want to do more of it.
We will invite one more question before concluding.
I'm very glad to be here today. And I would say that before I came here, I had all sorts of sugar plums going around in my head. But my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I've heard a good minister from the UK talking about working together. It is my understanding after being here and listening that from what I know already, the United Kingdom has certain responsibilities when it comes to our finance, whether we like it or not. And that referring to one of the words, a sentence you've been using together is working together. Tell me if I'm wrong in saying and coming to this conclusion that the whole issue of this situation is working together, sharing ideas for developmental purposes by the efficient use of our economy.
Well, I couldn't have put it better myself. I think that you ought to. That should be. You should on your talk show. You should be doing all the talking. That is absolutely spot on. You're absolutely right. And what these protocols are going to do is to give the UK that comfort factor, so we won't have to try and intervene the whole time, micromanage. But sharing information is absolutely crucial. Sharing information gives us, the information is king, because we have the information, we have the knowledge, and we can advise and we can work together.
One of
Yes.
I have one last comment. One of the things that's really hampering the growth of the BVI right now, and there seems to be a disconnect with children who are born in the BVI who may not, their parents are not indigenous to the island. They're in a space right now. There's no identity attached to them because they can't get a passport based on the British Nationality Act. What is the UK doing right now to address those situations with those kids? Because again, it's becoming a disconnection, and as they grow, they feel that they're not part of where they're born, they're not loyal to the country hasn't treated them right, and we all know that it falls under the British Nationality Act. Specifically, what are you guys doing to help address that? Because it's a problem with a growing society such as the BVI.
Yes, you hit on a very important point actually, because the constitutions that we have for these overseas territories are always going to be work in progress. And no constitution, every constitution is a sort of living phenomenon. You're always trying to improve it. You're looking at ways of making adjustments and changes for the better. And one of the questions I get asked in territories on a regular basis is that very question. And obviously, what territories really want to do is to control migration, because what they've got, they're small countries but have limited resources, and obviously you're going to need to sustain small controlled increases in population. But on the other hand, most territories now are looking at this very point, and it's something that I discussed with your Premier, and there's no immediate answer to it, but it's something that we keep under close review, I can assure you. Do you want to add to that, Honourable Premier?
You're quite right, Minister. It is a concern, and it's being discussed with myself and my colleagues, and something that we will arrive at a conclusion and make some recommendation.
Ladies and gentlemen, media, thank you for your questions. Thank you everyone for coming out. This concludes today's press conference and signing. Thank you.